Hi, I'm Justin from Ratings.com. Two of 2024's most popular OLEDs enter the arena. To my right, the LG C4, the new version of LG's very popular C-series of OLEDs. And to my left, the Samsung S90D, the successor to the outstanding S90C. They both have a similar market position and are comparable in some ways, but they are also quite different in others. Which one prevails head-to-head? We shall find out. In this comparison, we'll tackle design, HDR brightness, color gamut and volume, image processing, viewing angle, input specifications, and audio pass-through. Let's get to it. From the front, the two TVs look very similar, although the bezels on the C4 are much thinner than the ones on the S90D. You barely see them on the LG, they're that thin. The Samsung stand is entirely made of metal, while the LG's is made of both metal and plastic. The real magic happens on the back. The Samsung has a smooth matte finish, but the LG's back has a unique stone-like finish and feels grainy. It's quite nice. It really gives the TV a premium feel overall. Aside from that, the LG's inputs come out on the right side, while the Samsung's come out on the left, although some of the inputs also face the bottom. However, the inputs are hard to access if the TVs are wall-mounted, so there's no advantage from one over the other. While it may not happen to you, it's worth noting that our Samsung S90D came with a weird issue. A support bracket for the HDMI port cover was pushed under the motherboard instead of over it. This couldn't have happened during shipping. You can check out our S90D review if you want to know a bit more about this, but we haven't encountered anything like this on the C4. Both TVs have 4 HDMI ports that are capable of 4K at 144 Hz. For LG, this is new, as previous models were limited to 120 Hz. Although both TVs support all VRR technologies, only the C4 is officially certified as G-Sync compatible. Not a big deal, just nice to have. Both TVs have an eARC port that passes through advanced audio formats, but the C4 has the edge here since it passes through DTS audio formats. These are often used by physical media for their audio tracks. Without DTS, you usually don't have access to the best possible sound from your Blu-rays. Another thing that the C4 has that the S90D doesn't is Dolby Vision. This one is controversial to a degree. Having Dolby Vision is great, but there's a lot of discourse online about whether Samsung users are truly missing out on any image quality since their TVs don't support the technology. Basically, it depends on the content you're watching, as some content is better optimized for Dolby Vision. Further complicating the issue is that the S90D generally has a better image quality than the C4. Spoiler alert for what's to come. Then the question is whether the presence of Dolby Vision on the C4 compensates for its slightly worse picture quality overall. In most content, the answer is no, it doesn't. Still, it would be nice to have, but for now, Samsung is sticking with the less popular HDR10+ format. We just alluded to the performance in our conversation about Dolby Vision, but let's dive in, starting with HDR brightness. Gone are the days of OLEDs automatically being dim. These two upper mid-range products are certainly not dim. They're both very bright in HDR and can handle well-lit rooms with ease. Still, the S90D is noticeably brighter than the C4. We're talking 200 nits brighter in very bright scenes or with small highlights. That comes with a small caveat. The S90D's ABL is a bit more aggressive than the C4's. This means there's a more noticeable variation in brightness on the Samsung. The Samsung's automatic static brightness limiter, ASBL, is also very aggressive. It dims highlights on a 10% sustained window by more than 200 nits, which is noticeable. Still, that's not likely to affect many people, as most people don't watch bright static images for a few minutes at a time. Overall, the S90D is noticeably brighter than the C4. Unfortunately, the C4 loses quite a bit of brightness in its game mode, called Game Optimizer on the LG TVs. This is surprising since both LG's G4 and B4 don't suffer from that issue this year. So why is it still present on the LG C4? This is unfortunate as it makes the C4 significantly dimmer than the S90D in game mode. With the LG, you're better off enabling auto low latency mode and using another picture mode to preserve its brightness. The S90D also has the edge when it comes to color. In isolation, the LG C4 looks very colorful, and it is. It's just that the S90D is so much more vibrant with a wider color gamut and a much better color volume. This is where those quantum dots work their magic. And it's also helped by the Samsung's higher peak brightness. Overall, the S90D is noticeably brighter and more vibrant than the C4. Normally, we wouldn't talk about viewing angle as OLEDs are usually near perfect in this regard. This is true of the S90D, but sadly isn't of the LG C4. Look at this video. Notice anything? Yeah, the C4 has a very noticeable green tint when viewed at an angle. The C4 still has an excellent viewing angle, it's just not as good as we usually see on OLEDs. Oof, the LG C4 kind of struggled through that section, didn't it? The C4 is a great looking TV, it's just outshined by the spectacular S90D. But LG fans, fear not, we're about to put some shine back into the C4. Let's talk about image processing. LG has been working extremely hard on its image processing these past few years, and it shows. The LG C4's low quality content smoothing is excellent. It's so good that you won't notice any macro blocking in dark scenes. Impressively, it even manages to preserve details very well. In comparison, the S90D is certainly doing a worse job, as there's noticeable macro blocking in dark scenes. A clear win for LG. When it comes to upscaling low-resolution content, they're equally as good. Great, in fact. Details are upscaled well on both TVs, even if some fine details are hard to make out. Sadly, here, LG falters a bit. Color banding is much more noticeable on the LG than on the Samsung. In fact, the S90D has some of the best HDR Native Gradient handling we've ever seen. It's hard to find any banding on that TV. With the LG, it's very good, but there's noticeable banding in all shades of gray and in the brighter greens. So, which one of these is better overall? For most people, the S90D is the clear winner. It just looks much better than the C4. The clear advantage in the S90D's image quality even makes up for its lack of Dolby Vision. For gamers, the C4 has somewhat closed the gap as it now has 4K at 144Hz on all 4 HDMI ports, matching the Samsung's. But unfortunately, the C4 loses too much of its brightness in the game optimizer mode for it to really compete with the S90D in that regard. Despite the C4 having better image processing than the S90D cannot be beat by the C4 when handling color gradients in HDR. There's also the issue of the C4's viewing angle. Though excellent, it gives us a bit of a pause. That green tint quickly becomes apparent even at a slight angle. Overall, the C4 is only worth it for people who really want Dolby Vision or who absolutely want DTS audio pass-through for their Blu-rays. And even then, you're leaving a lot of performance on the table for those features. Is there an alternative to these two TVs? At this price point, not really. If you're willing to spend a bit more, however, you can move up to the fantastic LG G4. The G4 is sure to be one of the best TVs released this year. It's one of the brightest OLEDs on the market due to its MLA layer, which allows it to get much brighter than TVs with traditional WOLED panels. It has none of the C4's issues. The G4 barely loses any brightness in game optimizer mode, has near perfect viewing angles, and is extremely bright. It has better HDR Native Gradient handling as well, although it's not as good as the Samsung's. And it still isn't as colorful as the S90D, but it gets a bit brighter. The G4 is a standout TV, but it's expensive. If you want to learn more about the G4, you can check out our review here. Otherwise, just stick with the S90D. Well, that's all for our comparison between the LG C4 and the Samsung S90D. If you want to learn more, check out the full reviews on our website or use our comparison tool to look at the TVs side by side. The links are in the description below. Until next time, I'm Justin from RTINGS.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs. I will take the rest of the water. Ain't doing it.
This guy does not give in to peer pressure.
I do not. Except when it comes to